Excellent. All right. So thank you for joining me for today's Stick to It Week 3 webinar, an overview of nutrition. We're going to be going over a variety of topics today, and I hope to leave a little bit of time at the end to answer some more individualized questions if you have any, or dive deeper into some other nutrition topics. Again, with the theme of this webinar and this program, it's meant to be to collect all information that is going to be best used for your New Year's resolutions, to be able to make them sustainable, and to fit into our routine, and to cast aside any information that isn't really relevant to you currently, or you can always save for later if you ever are going to revamp some of your goals. So today we're going to be talking about just kind of the recommended food intake. We're going to go over some dietary guidelines, portion sizes, talk about nutrition labels, some handy tools to help you with portion control, some calorie activity. We're going to talk about the basal metabolic rate and that calculation, and some other food tracking apps and websites. If we do have time at the end, we can talk a little bit about food at home, work, and on the go. We'll see how much we can get through. All right, so I just want you to take a look at this plate and just kind of think about what you notice. I know this is a graph we've probably seen for many years, but it's one that's accurate, and I want to talk about it. So what you notice is that the fruits and vegetables cover about half your plate. Grains only take up a fourth, and then so think like spaghetti, not the whole plate. And then you also have a fourth that's devoted to your protein. You're going to see that there, or you want to see that implementing into your own diet, that there are trying to get at least all 5 food groups multiple times throughout the day in your meals as well as your snacks. If you don't have a fruit in your lunch or your afternoon snack, or sorry, if you don't have a fruit in your lunch, your afternoon snack or something later in the day should try to include some fruit. So this is again a plate recommendation for eating consumption. All right, starting off just with our recommendations. So the daily recommendations for an adult when it comes to fruits and vegetables and dairy. For fruits, it's going to be for both men and women, 2 cups a day. Vegetables, it's 3 cups for men and about 2.5 cups a day for women. For your dairy intake, it's going to be 3 cups a day for both men and women. On the side here, I have some examples of what serving sizes might look like. So for one vegetable, that's going to be 1 cup of raw or leafy vegetables is 1 serving, 1 small baked potato, or half a cup of cooked vegetables. For your fruit serving, it's going to be 1 small piece. So think about an average size of a grapefruit, about half of that, half a cup of canned or fresh fruit, or 1/4 of a cup of dried fruit as it shrinks as we dry it. That's going to be the fruit average serving. When it comes to a serving for dairy, 1 cup of milk or fortified soy milk, 1 cup of yogurt, 2 slices of hard or processed cheese, or 1.5 cups of ice cream is the breakdown of what a serving might look like. For your grains and proteins, and we're just going over servings, then we'll go more into the building blocks in a bit here. But for your grains and proteins, for the dietary recommendations for adults, and this is all collected by the 2020 to 2025 dietary recommendations for Americans. 3 to 4 ounces equivalent of grains, and that's for 4 more for men, and then for 3 around for women. And as you look as your daily consumption, about 50% is what's recommended about 50% of this intake of grains should be whole grains. And servings are not always equal a portion. So in general, 1 slice of bread or 1 cup of ready-to-eat cereal or half a cup of cooked rice, cooked pasta, or cooked cereal can be considered as 1 ounce equivalent for the grains group. When it comes to our protein, for men, around 6.5 ounces equivalents a day, and then for women, about 5.5 ounce equivalents a day. And then to calculate out this ounce equivalence, it's going to be in general around 1 ounce of meat, poultry, or fish, 1/4 of a cup of cooked beans, 1 egg, a tablespoon of peanut butter, or 1/2 ounce of nuts or seeds can be considered 1 ounce. And that's kind of the equivalent for the protein food groups. So now that we talked about our serving size recommendations, let's dive into a little bit more about the building blocks of our food, talking about our macro and micronutrients. For our macronutrients, that's going to consist of our proteins, carbohydrates, and our fats. So our proteins, they're going to be important because they are they function as the building block for most of our tissue in our body, including our bones, our muscles, our cartilage, our skin, and our blood. So they're also the main building block for enzymes, hormones, and vitamins. When it comes to how much we need, as we talked about servings, but how much this is going to mostly vary based off of our gender, our age, and our activity level, as well as our fitness goals. Standard recommendation is going to be around 10 to 35% of your total caloric intake, or this is going to be around 1.6 to 1.3 grams of protein per pound of body weight. That might seem like a lot, and that's why it really comes down to what your goals are and how you feel when it comes to how much protein we eat. Again, otherwise, 10 to 35% of total caloric intake. For our carbohydrates, one other thing to mention, when it comes to carbs and protein, 1 gram counts for 4 calories versus fat, 1 gram counts for 9 calories. That's going to play more of a role later, but I'll mention it now. For the carbohydrates, they're going to be important because they are broken down into sugars and starches, which are going to provide our body with the energy required to live, exercise, think at a normal capacity. So those carbohydrates are our brain and central nervous system's preferred source of fuel for functioning. And most of your carbohydrates should come from high quality, simple or complex carbohydrates. Trying to limit those low quality or simple carbs, which this can also assist with weight loss if that is a goal. When it comes to how much we need for our intake, that's again going to vary based off our gender, activity level, and our fitness goals. But it's recommended that we consume about 45 to 65% of our daily caloric intake from those carbohydrate sources. So in a 2,000 calorie diet, that's going to be somewhere between 900 to 1,300 calories about. When we are looking at our fats, again, those are 9 calories per gram over 4. Oh, I guess one other thing I want to mention for carbohydrates, the difference between our simple and complex carbs. So I mentioned that we want to strive to get more of those complex carbs versus the low carbs. And then for the breakdown of simple to complex carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates are going to be quick energy. This can be broken down by our body very quickly and used for an energy spike, typically a spike in blood sugar, and then it's going to come back down. This is not always a bad thing. So you don't have to think about this as processed sugars, but it could be fruits and some vegetables are thought of as those simple carbs because they have kind of a higher sugary items. And then those complex carbs are going to be what have more fiber in them, making them digest slower. And this also means that the body's process is going to process those sugars over an extended period of time, creating a steady flow of energy. So there's no spike, and you're going to have more of a stable blood sugar numbers. So this would be more like our rice, oats, or wheat. And then we have high and low quality carbohydrates. So the low quality is going to be higher in calorie count, lower in fiber, and low in micronutrients. And typically this is because they are processed. So think of a white bread. It has been processed and the bran has been removed from the white bread, making it more of that lower quality carb, and it's lacking the fiber or some other of the nutrient dense qualities, such as the high quality carbs. For those high quality carbs, they don't necessarily have higher calorie count, but higher fiber count typically. And you usually are going to be higher in one or more micronutrients with little to no processing to get the final product. So you could think of like quinoa, oats, buckwheat, or bananas are going to be more of those high quality carb sources. Moving on to our fats, fats are very important. Fats are a major energy source for our body, and they do aid in vitamin and mineral absorption and transportation throughout our bodies. They're going to help us protect our organs and help control our growth hormones. Well, our growth, our hormones, our insulin regulation, our basic metabolic processes. The fat is going to affect our blood lipid profile, those HDL and LDL cholesterol and is typically labeled as good versus bad depending on the effects of the HDL, or the high density lipid protein, and the LDL, or low density lipid protein. For how much of our fat sources, it's recommended that about 20 to 35% of your calories are consumed from fat sources. The breakdown between trans fats, saturated and unsaturated, we want less than 1% to come from trans fats, 5 to 10 from saturated, and then unsaturated, those moly and polyunsaturated fats, around the rest of the 20 to 30%. For trans fats, so yeah, we'll talk about trans fats, saturated fats, and then unsaturated. The trans fats, those are going to be what's classified as the bad fats. So they decrease our LDL and, sorry, not decrease, they increase our LDL, and they also increase your risk of type 2 diabetes. And it's around mostly because it's associated with those fried foods. So oils are stable under some repetitive high heat, but it can be cheaper to use oil sources that are a little bit, well, more cost effective, but they won't be able to withstand as much heat or use. So they will turn from an unsaturated fat into a trans fat. So try to avoid trans fats at all if possible. Our saturated fats, those do occur naturally in animal products like cheeses, nuts, and contrary to the belief in the 90s, they're not as bad as people think. So there was a big scare around saturated fats, trying to avoid them at all costs, similar to trans fats, but that we've had more information in the past on that. So trans fats, avoid. Saturated fats, within moderation is fine. And in fact, some saturated fats can increase your HDL, which is a good thing. And that being said, you shouldn't go crazy on the saturated fats, but they are okay to consume, and there are some benefits to them as well. For then the unsaturated fats, those are going to be the monounsaturated fatty acids, and the polyunsaturated fatty acids. So those fats are typically found in plant oils of a variety of sorts, and they are beneficial to us, and that's one of the main fats that we would like to implement into our diet, or found in nuts as well. And oils each have different smoking temperatures, and based off that, you can turn an unsaturated clean fat into a trans fat, which we can talk more about that at the end, or I can share that information later. All right, so that is our main macronutrients. Bottom line for our proteins and fats is that needs are going to be vary based off our gender and activity level. Recommendation is that 10 to 35% of your total caloric intake comes from protein sources, 20 to 35 comes from our fats. Fats are necessary in our diet for energy and growth. Trans fats have no health value. Saturated fats have little health value. And unsaturated fatty acids, those poly and monounsaturated sources, offer a variety of health benefits. And then if you are looking into cutting calories, fat content might be a place to look at that, because they have a higher calorie count per gram. It can be helpful for monitoring our diet. For our carbohydrates, they're going to break down into our sugars and provide us with energy. Simple carbs break down into fuel that much quicker, and the fuel for the fuel the body faster than complex carbohydrates. And a majority of our daily calories are going to be from those carbs. So thinking 45 to 65%. And dietary fiber is also important for our overall health when partnered with proper hydration. So we have to make sure that we are well hydrated. For hydration, we're not going to really talk about that today, but we should be drinking about half our body weight in ounces, or if we don't really know where to starting out with around 60 to 80 ounces of water, and then from there look at how you feel, but otherwise half your body weight in ounces, and then we add 10 to 20 ounces per hour of activity we implement into our schedule. And that should be paired then. We should be hydrated for extra fiber, which we should be consuming. For the dietary fiber, it's going to be an important aspect of carbohydrates that's going to aid in regulating our blood sugar levels and our cholesterol. It's going to help reduce our risk of cardiovascular diseases, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and our body cannot fully digest fiber, so it can help stimulate being satiated, or that feeling full. It helps also allow us to regulate waste removal from our body, and nutrient absorption from the stomach. You want to strive for around 14 to 15 grams. Taking this up to around 35 grams a day can still receive health benefits, again, paired with proper hydration. These can come from a variety of sources, but whole grains, green beans, celery, zucchini, avocado are just a few of the popular ones. So those are the main macronutrients that we have. We're going to talk a little bit about the micronutrients. So these are going to be, well, we always talk about, monitoring or looking at our macro, but the micro are very important as well. So these nutrients are the vitamins and minerals. They are needed in smaller amounts, but they do play a very important role in our bodily function. So our body's fuel and energy is going to come from the macronutrients, which is why we need larger amounts of those. However, all of the little bodily functions and our with that we need to utilize or move our body are primarily going to be performed and require a lot of the essential micronutrients to do things like begin and continue and stop organ and hormone functions, break down those macronutrients into energy, contract and release muscles in our body. So without the focus focus on your micronutrients, you may not be able to break down your macronutrients or be able to even move your eyes or read the screen in front of you. Think of those fine-tune or larger muscle functions. So for how much, when we go about how much we need for each of these 23 essential micronutrients, you need in relation to your daily value. This is going to again, kind of be modified by our age, our fitness level, and kind of what our goals are. But typically, we will, I guess, let's see, for the micronutrients instead of taking a lot of this time to go through them, I will send another information later about the individual needs based off your age, your height, your weight, your physical activity level, and have people look through them if they want, because it would take a lot of time to go through them. But for where to find the micronutrients they're going to be mostly found from our fruits and vegetables. And the best way to find and absorb these minerals or vitamins are going to be from those sources. So it also can be helpful to take a multivitamin if you want to support your intake of vitamins. However, because the vitamins have different chemical structures depending on the process, you might see that as you look at the back of a vitamin label or a supplement label, that some of the percent to daily value is a crazy number. And that is actually due to the fact that the compounder, how they make the pill, may not be what is adequately needed for your body to absorb it. So they put a crazy amount in there because your body's actually only going to absorb so much for your recommended daily intake. All right, but for those fruits and vegetables, they're one of the main 5 groups that we need to be consuming. When you are looking at them, you want to think about the color to get a variety of those vitamins and minerals that are going to be found in your fruits and vegetables. So, as I mentioned, kind of where to find some of these in the fruits and vegetables, they're going to kind of range by color. And tips to get more fruits and vegetables into your diet. The biggest key is going to have them be readily available. So depending on what your snacking habits are, if they are on hand or can they replace any of those simple or low quality carb snacks that we might snack on, or having kind of be making like a smoothie base and then kind of adding things in. But we can choose either fresh fruit, frozen, canned. If you do get canned, it is recommended to get it in water, not syrup, or you can rinse off the syrup or salted water. Otherwise, dried fruit and vegetables work as well. All right, so when it comes down to choosing a diet for you or kind of looking at your approach to nutrition and kind of where to progress or where to go if you might be stuck, these are kind of 5 main steps that I like to have people keep in mind when they're just bringing awareness into their lives for their nutrition. Similar to what we mentioned in our very first webinar of goal setting, take the same approach for physical activity, take the same approach for nutrition or any other aspect in your life, find kind of the reason why, and then from there you can kind of break down a plan or make a path that's easier to follow for you. So from my five main tips. Number one, keep most, if not all, food groups in the diet. So the fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. All the macronutrients, your carbs, protein, and fats should be included in a diet. Of course, if you want to try something different, that is totally up to you. But my personal recommendation is to strive to keep all 5 groups in and all 3 major macronutrients. We want to make sure that we are incorporating nutrient-dense foods. So think those good, clean, healthy fats, whole grain carbs, and foods with high fiber in them. So you can feel more satiated and they're more nutrient-dense, so less processed if able. Number 3, try to keep portion sizes in check to hold yourself accountable for the amount of total food you consume. You always can get more if you're hungry. It's always important to listen to your body, but starting with a smaller portion size can be beneficial in kind of listening to our body. It should be easy to follow. So you want to try to avoid diets that are very rule heavy. You want to make sure that it is safe and it's not asking for you to make extreme caloric cuts or fasting for extreme periods of time. Some of the easy to follow diets that are more nutrient dense are going to be, or the diets that are easier to follow are going to be more nutrient dense. They're not going to eliminate foods, and they're going to help decrease our heart disease or watch the amount of food we eat. So one of those, I'll go with a couple here. The DASH, or the dietary approach to stop hypertension, is a nutrient plan that emphasizes foods that are high in fiber, calcium, potassium, magnesium, that help lower blood pressure. They still include your main macronutrients. You have the Mediterranean diet, which emphasizes more on plant-based foods and healthy fats. The flexitarian is a style of eating that encourages you to eat mostly plant-based, but allows meats and other animal products in moderation. The Weight Watchers, or the WW diet, is a beneficial weight loss program that helps people lose weight by making small everyday changes. So you focus still on nutrient-dense foods within this diet. The MIND diet is another one that combines the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. So this creates a pattern that focuses specifically on your brain health. So those are diets that are easy to follow. They're not very rule heavy. It's just slight awareness points or within things within moderation. Now, diets that I would not typically recommend are diets that eliminate food groups or macronutrients altogether. Those are typically hard to keep up for extended periods of time, such as the keto diet, the paleo, the Atkins, the fasting diet, the Whole30. Those are diets that can be restrictive or very rule heavy. So again, feel free to try anything because something that might work for you might not work for me, or if it works for me, it might not work for you. So everything will be fine within moderation, but it's important to listen to your body, and if able, try to make sure we are maintaining all of those macronutrients within our diets. All right, talking a little bit more now on nutrition labels and portion sizes. So one way of awareness, as we can start kind of looking into our approach to nutrition, is awareness. So we can start, we don't have to make any drastic modifications or any caloric intake cuts or switching brands, but what we can start doing is just kind of observing, and we'll talk more about journaling, but observing how food makes us feel or what is in our food. So looking at those nutrition labels can be helpful. Some key areas is looking at the serving sizes and especially servings per container. This information is going to be on the food label, typically based off one serving, unless it's something like a 20-ounce soda. So making sure that we look at the serving size, because some packets, such as like a taco seasoning packet, typically, well, not typically, but some people, myself included, before I started reading a little bit more labels, I assumed that was always just one packet for your whole meal, but there's actually could be 5 to 10 servings within that packet. So it's just part of the awareness of looking at kind of what we're consuming and how many servings are in that container based off what we're using. The other thing we want to look at is checking those calories. So the calorie values are provided per serving, not per package. And when purchasing an item that says fat-free, it does not mean it's calorie free. foods with less fat can have just as many high calories as foods with high fat. And usually they're going to have added sugars to give them flavor. So that could be something to watch out for. As a general rule, 100 calories per serving is moderate, and around 400 calories per serving is considered high when you're looking at the calories. And just because I'm mentioning calories, now, if you do start reading more nutrition labels, just observing the calories doesn't necessarily mean you have to track or, again, modify your consumption, but bringing awareness into your life and kind of just realizing, oh, what am I eating? How's it making me feel? What are my goals? Those whys can be an important place to start in the nutrition awareness. When it comes to then, you want to try to, on a nutrition label, limit your fats, your sodium, or added sugar. There's going to be a percent of daily value that's provided in the label for the total fat within the package. And this includes all different types of fats. So it's important that you want to choose, well, if able, something that is lower or moderate within the saturated fats, trans fats, and then limiting sodium or added sugars. And this might be, when you're reading a nutrition label, the difference between the store brand or a main brand or vice versa. So looking at two different of the same products can be beneficial. Another area of focus is nutrients to get less of. So that's going to be, again, those fats, sodiums, added sugar. Nutrients to get more of are going to be our vitamins and minerals, more protein, but more so vitamins and minerals for those packages. So you can compare foods at a shop and choose a food that has maybe more nutrients present per serving in relation to the calories, which can help you determine what product might be best for you. All of these values are going to be based off a 2,000 calories per day diet, which is displayed in the footnote of the foods label. And for the percent of daily value, this information is going to be an easy tool to help you compare when you're buying food products. 5% or less of daily value in a serving is considered low, and around 20% of more of a daily value is considered high. And lastly, it's important to examine your ingredients. So they're going to be put in there in order of quantity, that the product from most to least. In general, the rule of five, so 5 ingredients or less is usually considered more natural or more healthy. So pay attention to those first 5 ingredients, as that's what most of the product is going to be made from. And you want to look out for those processed or artificial sugars, because it may not be best the product to consume if that's higher up in the list. And also, typically, if we can't read the product, the ingredient name, we might not want to be consuming it, or we might just want to look for a different variation. All right, when it comes to serving sizes and portion sizes, food portions have dramatically increased over the past 3 to 4 decades, and this has contributed to greater caloric intake for the vast majority of Americans. And society has kind of had a great impact on how much we eat. For instance, it's possible that your parents, your grandparents, or even yourself was part of the kind of clean your plate club, where you eat everything on your plate. This club kind of brings roots back to the Great Depression, when food was scarce and we didn't really know when we get our next meal in. So whether you're hungry or not, you better finish what's in front of you. But since then, we have not had a shortage of food, and the portions we give ourselves have increased, because a lot of families don't have 6 siblings to eat anymore. So with all the increasing values, we still haven't changed our thought process. So eating everything on your plate, no waste, is one of the biggest reasons why we kind of have a epidemic within our society. And this epidemic kind of points directly to the large imbalance between caloric intake versus caloric expenditure. So when it comes to those portion sizes, think back to my plate guide, where half your plate is fruits and vegetables, the other half is protein and grains. Want to make sure we pay attention to our serving sizes when eating at home or out for dinner. If you're at a restaurant, you can always ask for a to-go container right away to split your meal up before eating, especially if it's a pasta meal. Sometimes you can almost split those 4 ways. And if you end up being hungry, well, that's totally fine. You can pull more out of your box, but you kind of made that effort to separate it early on, so that you don't kind of mindfully overeat or kind of look into trying to clean your whole plate. You can also try serving food on a smaller plate, so more of like a 9-inch diameter plate or a salad plate. It's going to help you have smaller portions. Again, if you eat slower, that is also going to be helpful to avoid overeating. So you'll be able to feel your hunger cues better and respond versus eating an extra serving and then regretting it later or having a third helping. So a pro tip, you can try setting down your fork between each bite and finishing chewing and swallowing before picking it back up. And that can be helpful for kind of the slowing down process, listening for our hunger cues, because when the body will send kind of our hunger cues out that we're full, it only will send it a few times, one time, and then we won't really get it again. So if we miss it, we might not really feel it until we are fully stuffed. If you are hungry between meals, you can try to look for healthy snacks like a piece of fruit or a handful of nuts to avoid overeating at your next meal. When it comes to portion sizes, here is a little a graph that you can use for portion sizes based off a deck of cards. Is going to be what kind of 3 ounces of chicken or fish around the size of a baseball is going to be one of for our grains. We have our tennis ball. Sorry, it's a little hard to read on my laptop here. Oh yes, it's going to be for our medium-sized apple, about the size of an ice cream scoop is going to be about half a cup of cooked pasta or rice. And then I'll give a hand guide on the next for portion sizing as well. A battery is going to be 1¼ ounce of our cheese, and then we have a tablespoon of butter or margarine is going to be about the size of a stamp. So that's one loose way with familiar items. The other way, which I prefer, is the visual hand guide for portion sizes. So if we're looking at around the spread of our knuckles, and of course this will modify based off our hand sizes, but it's a general guide that can be helpful. So around our knuckles is going to be a representation of about half a cup. If we're looking at our entire fist, this can be 1 cup or kind of a serving of rice, again, or a full cup. Looking at just the tip of your finger can be about a teaspoon. A tablespoon is about the length of your thumb. And then a palm is a good guide for about 3 ounces, which can be used for serving meat. All right, so now that we went through kind of dietary recommendations, went a little bit over picking a diet that would work best for you, and then nutrition labels and portion sizes, we can talk a little bit about tracking. So tracking is a great way, again, kind of getting yourself into the nutritional awareness mindset. It can help you look into how many calories you might be consuming of different foods or how many calories the foods contain. Again, it can help with awareness. You don't have to track. It all depends on your goals and where you want to progress or how you want to progress, but it can be helpful for just learning kind of what and how much we are putting into our body. Before we talk too big into kind of the tracking or how to track, one thing we want to look into is going to be how much to consume or kind of what our basal metabolic rate is. So the basal metabolic rate is going to be the base rate that your body burns calories or your base caloric needs for a day. And this is going to be very different for you, your coworker, your spouse, any different people. And it's important to note that the body is very custom to you. So the first step in finding your body's needs is to find your basal metabolic rate. Otherwise, you'll see it known as your BMR. So again, this determines how many calories your body needs to function at rest. This does not include calories that you have used or burned while your body is at work or exercise throughout the day. So this calculation on the screen is one way to determine that if you want to hand plug it in. The other, which is more streamlined variation, is there's a lot of apps or resources out there that you can use to find your basal metabolic rate or find your caloric intake needs. The way you can find that is off of TDEE, or total daily energy expenditure. This is going to find your basal metabolic rate in addition to the average expenditure you need if you want to maintain weight, gain weight, or lose weight, depending on your goals. Now, one thing I want to stress about the basal metabolic rate, especially as pertaining to weight loss. So if you are to fall below your basal metabolic rate, you will actually start burning more of your lean muscle mass. You'll liquidate more of that because it's better for brain function or for energy versus our fat. Our body will kind of go into survival mode if we fall below our basal metabolic rate for too long. So it's kind of reverse thinking almost. Sometimes if people want to lose weight, they go into it saying, all right, I need to cut all these calories. I need to up my exercise. Part of that could be true, but within moderation and knowing how to do that correctly. So if we dramatically cut our calories and fall below our basal metabolic rate, we're actually putting our body into survival mode, and you're going to see kind of a weight plateau. And then until we can kind of figure that out, and in addition, if we fall below our basal metabolic rate consistently, we're going to see decreased levels of energy. Your production's going to, just kind of how our bodily function decreases just a little bit. So we'll be more tired, we'll have lower energy, we'll be less productive, we might be a little bit more ornery. So that's something to look into if we are trying to modify our caloric intake at all, is being aware of our body's actual needs and then how much we burn during exercise. So here's again a value of an example. Broken down, I would recommend the easiest form is to use the total daily energy expenditure form. There's calculators outlined. And if you do plug it in online, you're going to see there's a variety of different numbers that they might get you, but it's going to give you an average. And just like awareness to physical activity or to any other goal in your life, using one of these websites is just to give you an idea. It's not a number that's 100% perfect. It is just a calculated number, so it might not be totally right for you, but it gives you a baseline, it gives you an idea of where to start or progress with some of your goals. All right. So when it comes to tracking your food intake, once we use a website like your total daily energy expenditure or a website such as Lose It or Chronometer or My Net Diary or MyFitnessPal. Some of these websites will take you through a process of setting up a goal using your height, your weight, your age, and your physical activity level, which is just what the total daily energy expenditure website or app will use to spit out those numbers. But once it kind of puts in there, it gives you a better idea of where to progress from there. Now, again, you don't have to track food, but it can be one step in the awareness journey. So from awareness, after you look at your nutrition label, after you maybe look at more portion sizes, next steps would be more of a food journal. So you can note as specific as you want. If you want to weigh your food and put that in there, great, that's totally fine. But otherwise, if you just want to say, I had a turkey sandwich, and then later on you want to add in, it made me feel X, Y, or Z, or I went out to eat at a fast food restaurant and then I felt sluggish or, I didn't have a lot of energy later. You can note that down. So writing by hand food diaries can be very helpful and just another step in kind of the world of awareness for our nutrient intake. There's a lot of apps out there. A couple I'll go through is MyFitnessPal is one of my preferred apps for tracking or awareness. It gives you a couple good graphs and it's pretty easy to navigate. It's a convenient app. It syncs well to your phone or other apps that you have or your smartwatch if you have one, so it can plug in your exercise data in there. There is a space that you can put in recipes in your newsfeed. There is a version between paid and free. Free version is totally fine. It also will keep your records. And one nice thing about MyFitnessPal, you can put in your own recipes or your own meals, save them for later. And if you are, a little quick tip here, looking for, so they paywalled their QR code scanner. But if you set your location out of the US, you can actually utilize that QR code scanner, which is helpful because it's a nice platform, but sometimes paying for a service might not be within your budget. MyPlate calorie tracker is another one. You can create custom goals on here, similar to MyFitnessPal. It will put an emphasis on your macronutrients, and it's also compatible with iOS or Android. I see that cut off with my picture there, but yes, it's compatible with Android as well. For a food diary, as I mentioned a little bit before, they are helpful to just one step in the direction of food awareness, or this can be done in addition to food tracking or calorie tracking if that aligns with your goals, but it can also help you with visualizing your daily intake of food. You can easily identify your eating habits. And then a really big one here is being able to kind of note how the food makes you feel or identify any of your cravings you might have. So food diaries are very beneficial and can help more with that awareness aspect. All right, kind of putting that all into summary. It's most important to pick a tracking method that is best for you. If it doesn't pertain to your goals, you don't have to track. I will say if you're looking at trying to make any body composition changes, tracking is very beneficial, or at least going down the road of awareness and just being aware of what we're eating or how many calories we might be eating, and that our body does have kind of an amount it should be consuming. When it comes to calories, the body is not great at burning calories, so we can never outrun our fork. It's not. I wish we were better at burning calories, but unfortunately, we're not. As it comes to burning calories, we mentioned it a little bit in the physical activity webinar, but you can get the most from cardio. But we still can burn equally with strength depending on our intensity. And there's other varieties of physical activity as well. Feel free to go back and watch that webinar if you wish. So it's also important then to pick handy tools that are going to help control your portions, whether that's the hand method or the at-home item method, but finding something that is just there for awareness. Review those nutrition labels, and you can also ask when you go out to eat. You can request takeout boxes as soon as you get your food. And the biggest thing here is going to be to practice, just like physical activity or any other goal. It's going to be important that we practice. You're only going to be able to get good or better at tracking by doing it. So we've come to the end of our webinar here. Is there any main questions that people have? This could be in any area if you want to talk a little bit more in depth about any of the macronutrients. I know I didn't want to take too much time because there's a lot of micronutrients, each with a different percent of our daily intake needs. So feel free to put any questions, come off mute, or put them here in the chat. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your day.